Good evening, everyone. I'm Liesje. I'm assistant curator at S.M.A.K, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this online book launch of Sales Catalogue, Verkaufskatalog. This book or catalog takes a critical look at the Works for Sale series by the Austrian artist Kurt Ryslavy. The series can be considered as a masterpiece of an artistic practice that spans almost 4 decades. The central concept is the idea of buying or selling another artist's work under the title Work for Sale and with the name Kurt Ryslavy. I'm very happy that the artist himself is with us tonight. Kurt, welcome. And Kurt will go in conversation with Philippe Van Cauteren, artistic director of S.M.A.K, with Monica Bayer-Wermuth, curator at Museum Brandhorst in München, and with Thomas Becker, cultural scientist and philosopher. Monica and Thomas both wrote a text for the book, and I'm very happy that they can participate tonight. So Monica, Kurt, Thomas, Philippe, all very welcome. Monica and Kurt, if it's okay with you, then we'll start with a conversation in which you can give us some more insights in the origin and history of these Verkaufswerke. And then we can move on to a short film, which is a montage of a previously recorded conversation between Kurt and Philippe. And after this film, we can continue the conversation with the four of you. For everyone who's watching, if questions arise during the film or the conversations, I would like to invite you to write them down in the chat in Facebook or in YouTube. And I will direct the questions to the speakers later on. So Kurt, Monica, again, very welcome. And it's my pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you, Liesje, for that nice introduction, and good evening, everyone. And thanks again for the kind invitation to join you tonight for the book presentation of Kurt Ryslavy, Verkaufswerke at S.M.A.K. Dear Kurt, it's so great to see you here also, if it's only digitally. And I'm very honored opening the conversation with you. The book that we are presenting tonight is dedicated to a really seminal group of works of yours. The group is called Verkaufswerke, as Liesje already mentioned, Works for Sale. And the catalog itself is called Verkaufskatalog, Sales Catalogue. And to me, your decision titling the book like that and not like the group of works, Verkaufswerke, is another brilliant turn within the very exciting history of these works. And yesterday I was leafing through the wonderful book, which I hold into the camera. I hope it's like in the right, visible in the right way. And yeah, and again, I had like to smile because it's a monographic publication, of course, but at the same time, it is also a group catalog with 27 artists, yourself included, if I counted right. And I think, yeah, it brings us already to a lot of strands within the concept and theory of your work in the book. And I had to stop at Verkaufswerk 23. And I also tried to hold that into the camera just for 1 second, and I hope one can see it a little bit. It's not so important to particularly see that one, and it's just that I was remembering that this was the work that brought us, like you and me, in touch with each other. I was an assistant curator at Tate Modern, where I was working on a large Franz West retrospective curated by Christine Marcel and Mark Godfrey. And I remember that this work was up for discussion as a possible loan to the show. It is a fantastic Passstück by Franz West, a work that can usually be handled by the viewer. And this particular one includes a pair of children's sunglasses. that the viewer could put on for further experience of the artwork. Sorry?
The viewer should put on the children's sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly.
To view contemporary art. Children's sunglasses, because otherwise he can't see contemporary art.
Yeah, it's brilliant in itself. But for a couple of reasons, unfortunately, we were not able to include the work in the show. However, you and me, we stayed in touch. And I learned only later that this is not only a work by itself by Franz West, but that it is also part of an artwork of yours. It is one of your Verkaufswerke, works of sale. And when I first heard about the concept of the Verkaufswerke, I was a bit puzzled, I have to confess. And it was only when we sat down together in a cafe in Munich, I think it's also already like 2 years ago or so, something like that, 2 or 3 or 4, yeah. And you told me the whole like genesis of the group. And then I was able to catch the concept and what the works really are, at least I think so. And not only how they are or came about, but also what they do, I think is really interesting. And I think that this background could be very interesting for everyone joining us tonight for this conversation. So I would like to ask you if you could go back to that moment, and I think it was in 1990, when you already lived in Brussels for about 3 years or so. And if you could tell the story of the Verkaufswerke, of the works of sale, right from the start.
Okay. All started in Ghent, where the book presentation takes place now, but not at the S.M.A.K, but there was a little Kunstverein called Opus Operandi, and he wanted to show the man who was organizing this wanted to show Austrian art, because in the time Jan Hut still was in the museum, and he was not very focusing on Austrian art. And so this Kunstverein wanted to point out a bit Austrian art. So yeah, it was not so easy to get already very well-known Austrian artists for a small show. So the organizer wanted to have Franz West in the show, and he couldn't find him anyone, because the dealers who organized the upcoming of Franz West market presence were not cooperative. And that's the background story. And yeah, in fact, it's a long story. It's really, yeah, it's already 30 years ago. And
so they wanted to bring in the works by Austrian artists, but I think there was also the plan, like you were also invited to the show.
Because I was not famous at all, and the organizer wanted to have some sponsoring money from the Austrian Cultural Ministry. And so he went to the Austrian embassy, and there he got to know my name, because at the embassy they said, but do you know there is an Austrian artist living in Belgium? You should put him in the show. And so he put me in the show, and he got the subsidies from the Austrian embassy. And but in the months of preparation, the room I got in the beginning, it was a big room. It got smaller and smaller. But he always pushed me to get the old Franz West works that I had in my house in Brussels. and that I didn't want to show because I wanted me to show in the Austrian art show. And in the end, the place I got for my own work reduced, and I got so angry or unnerved, énervé, how do you say this in English? Stressed, that I said, fuck it, show the work of Franz West. It is a Verkaufswerk from me, because I had to sell it, because I just, it was a difficult period. I bought a house in Brussels and so on. And I had to sell these works. And this dynamic of this first show, where the first time Verkaufswerke were shown, was pushed as a fight against the art market. Do you understand this, or is this because also
maybe you can also talk a little bit about the fact that, like, before or about the same time when this happened, that you wanted to sell the works and it became difficult for you, and you couldn't get the price that was actually, that the works would actually be worth it. And that, as far as I remember, that you then decided to not sell them if you cannot, like, if...
Yeah, no, it was ridiculous. The dealers proposed me 10% of the real worth, and they said, by the way, early work of Franz West are not important. It just gets important from 1986 on, where the dealers started to work with him. Everything West produced before is really not important. That they said this in real. You cannot believe this, but it's like this. And but everything is about the money. Everything is about the costs, and everything is about the worth. And Franz West in the 80s, in the beginning of the 80s, he went through Vienna. He went to a flower shop. He went to a grocery. He sold his works. He tried to sell his works like for nothing, and he couldn't sell it. So it's all very, very difficult to. You can write books about this. And yeah, back to the Verkaufswerke, I showed these works in the show and in Ghent, in Opus Operandi. And nobody understood it, because in the time I just showed Franz West, and next to a sculpture of Franz West, I put a little plastic bag with documents, with correspondence with art dealers, and about the selling of the work. And nobody understood this. And some years passed by, and in these years, I reflected what's happening, why nobody understands what I'm doing, and I developed the idea to make little coffers, little boxes, very beautiful
cases, yeah,
to present the work that I want to sell, like somebody who is selling diamonds or jewelry or something like that. Huh? It's like or in a patisserie, very fine things, and it's a bit ironic, of course. And I had the chance that one important curator decided to show this. It was Kasper König, and he showed it at Sculpture Projects Münster in 1997. And from that point on, it was no discussion if that could be art of Kurt Ryslavy or not. It was done. It was art. But before, it was, that is maybe, so that's also very interesting. But another fact is very important, that over the 30 years where I showed the Verkaufswerke in museums and in galleries, in commercial galleries, in Kunstvereinen and everything. I couldn't sell any Verkaufswerk, sales work for sale. I couldn't sell any Verkaufswerk during all these years, 30 years, you imagine this? They are called Verkaufswerke, but it is for a collector or a collection, is it disgusting to be forced to buy something from an unknown artist? So this was a kind of affront to the art market, and that's the reason why it is so difficult. It was so difficult to sell works from this series. And then I had this show in Hanover, Langenhagen, with Noah Mertens, the director of this Kunstverein Langenhagen. And she said to me, yeah, good, we make the show, it's a big show. And I just want to make a publication, a book, if you have an idea for an artist book. And so thanks to Noah Mertens, this book could be done. She was very, very enthusiastic in the beginning, but then the money ran out for the for the production, and I published it myself and together with Woldemar in Zurich in the end, luckily, which was a very good cooperation. Altogether, it was a complex cooperation between different players, and I'm very happy that the book is now here. And in fact, it works already like hell. The S.M.A.K is buying, collectors from Vienna buying it. No, it's a joke, but it is amazing when you wait 30 years for something so simple, and then it's happening.
Yeah, but it's really great, and I think it's there's something in it. Also, what you like with what you've just ended, that is contextualization through institutions make a huge difference. Especially like, yeah, as you said, it's a critique on not only in the art market, but it's also in a way a comment on how the whole system works. And it's very interesting to watch the dynamic of the Verkaufswerke, and therefore I think they have something very, in contrast to their title, something very if something very ephemeral. So they are not really, it's a very conceptual work, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's what was very en vogue in the time and still is en vogue. It's non-material art, where you say it's just the Verkauf is the thing. In fact, the boxes that I made, they are kind of materialization of the Verkaufswerk. The Verkaufswerk is non-material, but the box and the certificate is something like the provenience. It is a kind of a proof that it's really from where, because that is all very, very important. And I don't know, maybe we should make the film, or do you want to? Or
I think sounds good, and then we can continue the conversation all together after the film.
Okay.
Also Kurt, wir sitzen zusammen, nach Anlass von einer Buchpräsentation, die bald stattfinden wird. Ich glaube, dass die Tatsache, dass wir uns nicht live treffen können, ist auch ein Vorteil, da wir jetzt eigentlich die Zuhörer die Erfahrung geben lassen, wie eine Verhandlung zwischen einem Künstler und einem Museumdirektor stattfinden kann.
Wunderbar.
Und es ist so, vor kurzem hast du mir dieses wunderbare Buch Verkaufskatalog gegeben. Und ich war eigentlich sehr erwundert von einem von diesen ersten Sätzen in diesem Beitrag von Monika Bayer-Wermuth, wo sie eigentlich sagt, dass es bisher oder bis jetzt noch nie einen Sammler oder eine öffentliche Institution gegeben hat, die eine von diesen Verkaufswerken für die Sammlung erworben hat. Und dann dachte ich, das würde sehr schön sein, wenn S.M.A.K eine Institution sein könnte, die das realisiert. Und das ist eigentlich eine Sache, die ich gerne mit dir jetzt besprechen möchte, um am Ende dieses Gesprächs eine Entscheidung getroffen zu haben.
Traumhaft.
Ja, zum Beispiel dieses.
Ja.
Bitte?
Also das ist ein schönes kleines Köfferchen. Man kann das hier auch so minimalistisch an die Wand hängen, so, ne? So mit diesen kleinen Ösen. Und so lassen, wenn man Minimalismus-Fan ist, ne? Geschlossen. Ja. Aber man kann auch das öffnen. Dann wird dieses Werk hier von Franz West so präsentiert, dass es aus dem Koffer genommen werden kann oder im Koffer belassen werden kann.
So, man könnte in diesem Fall der Arbeit von Franz West an die Wand hängen,
genau,
und daneben dieses Köfferchen.
Ja.
Zu
oder offen oder an den Ösen offen hängend.
Ja. Ja? Wir haben hier auch schon eine Liste, weil wir hatten schon Ende letztes Jahres und Anfang dieses Jahres letztes Jahr, 15. November, eine Korrespondenz miteinander.
Ja.
Und dann komme ich sofort doch in eine Frage, die ich jetzt dir gegenüber habe, weil das ist, was mich auch begeistert, ist, das war so ein Satz oder so eine Boutade, was ist der Wert eines Kunstwerks, wenn das Kunstwerk keinen Wert hat? Und das glaube ich, dass in ganz deiner Beschäftigung auch dort eine Art so spielerische Kritik ist gegenüber die Wahrnehmung, die Kunstinteressierten oder anderen haben gegenüber einem Kunstwerk.
Ja.
Es gibt hier eine Arbeit von Georg Herolds,
ja,
ganz bekannten deutschen Künstler, aber es gibt auch Jade und Motte, weniger bekannt. Aber du mit den Verkaufswerken machst eine Revolution. Ich weiß, dass es ein großes Begriff ist, aber eigentlich ist das der Fall.
Ja. Ich habe einen leichten ironischen Unterton und der Wert des Kunstwerks ist sozusagen ein Marktwert von einem bekannten Künstler und das Verkaufswerk von Kurt Ryslavy ist in dem Fall 10% des Werts, des wertvollen Inhaltes.
Ja.
Ja?
Ja.
Theoretisch. Ne?
Ja.
Ja.
Was uns bringt, wir haben die Nummer 2, 21, 32, 41, 46 und die Nummer 7. Ja? Ich dachte, weil es für mich, weil man auch agieren soll gegen so das Ikonische,
ja,
dass man auch eigentlich handeln soll in einer Art, die so auch diese Praxis sichtbar macht.
Ja.
Das ist nicht eine einmalige Geste ist oder einmaliges Event ist, dachte ich, dass es gut wäre, so mich zu entscheiden für verschiedene.
Ja, umso besser, ja.
Du hast auch diese Sonderedition.
Das ist eine Edition, wo sozusagen die Verkaufswerke, die hier im Verkaufskatalog ohne Preis sind, mit einem Stempel versehen werden, wo der Preis und das Datum und die Signatur von mir handschriftlich beigefügt werden. Und dann wird hier gestempelt.
Voilà.
Stempel sieht so aus. Und dann, jetzt mal, da steht verfügbar mit Inhalt und Zertifikat, verfügbar leer, also nur die Dose mit Zertifikat.
Ja.
Oder es ist nicht verfügbar, dann ist es verkauft. Und das ist dann die Nummer 16 von 30 Épreuve Artist.
Ja, aber dann müssen noch 2 andere auch gestempelt werden.
Genau, ja.
Ja. Okay, aber jetzt haben wir, dafür können wir uns noch Zeit nehmen. Ich glaube, dass es jetzt, dass es eine sehr schöne Wanderung war.
Ja.
Durch das Buch, durch den ganzen Gedanke von den Verkaufswerken, auch die Historik der Verkaufswerke, wie die entstanden sind.
Ja.
Und wie, oder was auch deine Beschäftigung ist, als Künstler mit dieser fremde Notion von was als Wert umschrieben wird.
Ja.
Nein?
Ja, Kunstwerk ohne Wert.
Kunstwerk ohne Wert. Voilà.
Der Ton noch hier? Ja, Ton ist da. Philipp, sag was.
Yeah. Let's say it's thanks to this video that I discovered that I had a hole in my pulley. Which in the meantime I repaired, as you can figure out. Huh? No, it's when I was reading the text of Monica in the publication, I was really surprised that indeed you mentioned that so far there was no institution or no private collector who had acquired one of these Verkaufswerke of Kurt for the collection. And then I was immediately saying to Kurt, okay, I would like to do this. I would like to commit to you as an artist. But then in the meantime, I figured out that I was not the first one anymore. But that's not the major thing. I think the important thing is to have these works as part of the mental map of the collection of S.M.A.K, as I think that in these Verkaufswerke, Kurt is really bringing up some very crucial, essential aspects in relation to the art world. And for sure nowadays, in the era of the early 21st century, they are even more vital and more needed than ever. If we see how the art world is having a bigger obsession than ever with everything which is the commodification. And I was thinking on one thing, when also in Monica's text and also Kurt was bringing up the idea of the immaterial aspects of the Verkaufswerke in origin, that only over time you needed to have the box, das Köfferchen, in order to make it acceptable between brackets. This immediately brought me in mind the work of Tino Segal, the artist who was also representing Germany like about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, who in his practice is capable of selling performances or sculptures, let's say, without any physical trace, without any certificates, without any formal written agreement, without any photographical documentation. The only thing which happens is a kind of official meeting at the notary where the artist and the seller agrees upon the transfer of a certain ID to the collection of a private or a public institution. And so I was wondering, it's not that we are capable to give an answer, but I was wondering how come that in the case of Tino Sehgal, you know, who started his success, let's say at around 2000, more or less, how come that an artist as Tino Sehgal was capable of articulating this you know, this immaterial aspect, whereby you have been like a kind of precursor in this kind of reflection on the art market. I have no answer, but the answer that the power of you know, powerful galleries are the ones who decide which kind of chess game is being played. That is a kind of a kind, you know, like a kind of a connection with Tino Sehgal.
Yeah, he was 10 years later.
Voilà, that's what I'm at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's often like this. We are too early that.
It's still different, of course, but there are some parallel elements within both, let's say, sales strategies. Yeah.
I think, to me, one aspect which is a crucial difference, possibly like not regarding the concept in general, but that it's the authorship question that comes into play with Kurt, with your works, and that people were questioning whether this is this can be like an honest and truthful art if you put your name on a label of another artist's work, and particularly in the case of artists who had, who were more better known in particular circles. And I think that this critique made it even more explosive and also exciting, but more challenging for you to defend your concept, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
I have a little bit problem with the fact that there is only one market of art. That's wrong, I find. Kurt told me and told us here that before he told the Verkaufswerke, the artworks of other artists, he changed his artworks in another market that is changed with Franz West and other people there before they get some higher value. That's another market. That's a market between artists to change or to mark their artworks before they get a higher economical value. So there are two values, and that's the reason why we have the bipolarity of two authorships. One authorship more the value. So even Philip, I have to say, an artwork without value, no, without an economic value, but with a symbolic value as well. So there's the bipolarity of authors, and we have the bipolarity of a market in art. And that is something what reveals the Verkaufswerke of Kurt Ryslavy, I find. That's why I'm very careful with always what in our mind is to speak about one art market. That is a bipolary market.
But although it's a minority who understands this bipolarity of the art market, I think if you would speak to the majority of people being active in the art world, they would not see this kind of subtle, the subtle changes occurring.
Exactly, but you belong to another market, Philip. You saw that's it. This people already exists, of course. The off spaces and excuse me, yeah.
Even when people are not aware of the bipolarity of the market, there are certain taboos in the market world, and these Verkaufswerke are touching these taboos, and so there are people who are furious or frightened or attracted or rejected from these works, because the language of the Verkaufswerk is speaking in between the bipolarity.
It's also the three conflicts that Monica is bringing up in her text. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like mentioning three conflicts in relation to the author and in relation to the commercialization.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, what I think is also like a really crucial aspect is that in the works, which is already in their title, that it is about the sale, and I think it's about the question what it means to not only to sell an artwork, but what does it mean to buy an artwork and to own an artwork, and not like in terms of a contract, but more in a social but also philosophical way, to say why does it like what does come along with an artwork, and why is it why would you have the longing to own it, and what comes with it? And I was also thinking about the fact that with the like comparing it with other products, and art is not a product like a, I don't know, like a handbag or a watch. But if we buy a watch that comes with a certain identity, that is transported through a brand, that is transported through images and through advertisement, and in the and if we look at art without like this concept of owning, this is a completely different discussion. But now I'm really focusing on that idea of owning and buying. I think that you would actually buy, in a way, this background, like a conceptual idea, an intellectual background, a circle of people with it. Like you own it, and with owning it, you become a part of it. And I think that is so interesting in the Verkaufswerke, that this aspect of buying is put into the center, and therefore this relation between artist and someone owning the art, or even a secondary market, and like promises, and becomes somehow a layer of the works.
It's very strange to speak about the secondary market. I think that's the first market, the secondary market, because that's the change between artists before they get, that's now very important, legitimate. Before they get legitimating, they have no value. So we have three positions, not only the iconic mark of the other way, this so-called second market. I think that's the first market. We have the problem of legitimacy. It was, you said, Kurt, 20 or 30 years. No, not 30 years, 20 years. You get legitimacy. You get the legitimacy by Sculpture Projects at Münster. So Duchamp needed 40 years for his ready-mades or whatever. And we always forget that artists struggle very, very long for legitimacy. So there's not only the market in two poles, there's always the third pole of legitimacy. And at the same time, if Franz West get a higher legitimacy, your work hadn't this legitimacy still. And I think this difference is the second difference. You have not only the market and on the one hand, the symbolic, cultural value, you have always the value of legitimacy. So three poles of a market.
But this, pardon, Kurt?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to agree.
But I wanted to add to this, does sometimes the absence of the legitimacy not create some extra degrees of freedom in order for the artist to operate?
What do you mean with freedom? I think Kurt, as he was changing his artworks with Franz West, whatever, he was free in a certain way. But but it was very expensive for him, this freedom.
But I always, the Verkaufswerke is just one part of my complete work. And I always was very, very aware that it is the most important thing for me to have the freedom to do these things. And it is also something that is less understood by the public, that I'm making this and then something completely different. So I'm making sculptures and I'm making paintings and I'm making these conceptual works, and people cannot bring it together. And but that is because I'm completely independent. I'm not dependent of my art dealer who says, do this. I just sold 2 of these things. Can you have something in this way a bit? Then you get in a dependency of the art dealers, of the one who buys things from you. But I always kept apart from this dependency, because I sold Austrian wine in Brussels, and the art market, the art dealers say, "Oh, that's this shit artist who sells the wine. He's just a wine dealer." But it is my freedom.
But still an ironic way that there are a lot of recognition of art market persons who haven't the code to understand it. That's typical the mass market, and you're playing with this ironic thing that you represent an artist who fulfill the dreams of recognition but have no code to understand it. That's the ironic against the mass market. There are a lot of people, they have only the recognition of artists, but no code what it is really. No code of the fact that there are 20, 30 years needs for legitimacy and all these things, all this hard struggle and all this thing. And one cannot do anything other than to be ironic as a serious artist about this.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like lately also, Kurt, when we have been meeting, when we did like walking meetings, you were also like mentioning a lot Marcel Duchamp, and you've been reading a lot about Marcel Duchamp. And of course, it's impossible to not mention the notion of the ready-made in relation to the Verkaufswerke. Thomas already was bringing it up. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on this for the audience?
Yeah, the early ready-mades, even Duchamp himself did not recognize it really as art. I think it was more a performative thing. For example, to put urinoir in a very traditional show, and it disappeared. He didn't keep it because it didn't have any value, or nobody really thought, it should come into a collection. It was just Stieglitz who made the photo, but it's very mysterious, and a lot of artworks of Duchamp disappeared because nobody took care of it, and they had no value. They had no value.
Economic value. Economic value.
Of course, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So
it's also crazy that Arturo Schwarz, in the high time of Italian design, convinced Duchamp to make an edition of 8 of all his ready-mades that were produced 40 years before. But Arturo Schwarz put it into this design market, and it was also the beginning of the pop art. So it was a changing of, but it was just four years before Duchamp died. It was, and Duchamp said, "Yeah, go ahead with it. It's good. It's art."
I think one had to know that the time as Duchamp exhibited this urinoir, he was a famous artist in America, but not in Europe at this time. because
it was a mistake of cubism.
Exactly. Because of mistake of cubism, but nevertheless, in
pseudo
USA, he was well known, and
he
he
was
played with this.
in Paris, and then he had a chance to go to America, and in America they thought that's the real cubism.
Exactly. It's very strange, and so everybody expected that Duchamp would send an image to this exhibition, but no, he sent Urinoir and then with the signature like an image. That's the ironic way. And now you have the same thing. It's in a certain way already made, because you have two signatures. You have the signature of Franz West, for example, and the signature of you. And the third thing is that your signature is from an artist, and in the same way, it is heuristic signature.
Yeah.
That is very strange. So I think it is a further evolution of the ready-made.
Yeah. No, it's the heuristic part of the Verkaufswerk is also a very interesting part, because there were discussions with the entourage of Franz West if certain works from his early period are really authentic works from him, or if it was just a shit from his atelier that somebody took with. So it is, and he had this discussion with other artists too, where he made exchanges, and then the entourage of Franz West, that means the dealers, they refused the authenticity of these early works that he made exchanges with Erwin Wurm and with a lot of artists. So the heuristic part is something I wanted to work out 15 years ago with somebody in Paris, but it was too complicated. But that is something that is very interesting to work on, or to make a show of.
How does it feel, Kurt, now that suddenly you see that there is like that you're at the start of this legitimacy, that suddenly through the book and there's a big attention even of private collectors in the Verkaufswerke. Is this not a bit bitter, or how do you look at it? Or?
Because it is for me with the book, it's closed. For me, it's a closed case, like on court. I don't work with this anymore. It's just money.
Okay.
It's not. I'm not affected anymore. What is really interesting for the moment, still on the Verkaufswerk, is the heuristic part. That I would be interested to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But
and maybe the concept also really comes to life, since you were always also saying that the Verkauf, the sale of the work, is part of the concept of these works. But as long as they did not happen, the sales, they were just hypothetical parts of the work, and now they are actually coming into place, which is really a great after all the years.
Yeah.
Thomas, maybe you can still a bit, also elaborate further on this bipolarity. I think you touched this aspect.
Yeah.
Just at the start.
In a nutshell, maybe. This bipolarity of two markets. On the one hand, economic market is clear, but on the other hand, you have what Benjamin calls the Ausstellungswert, or the value of the exhibition. That's not the same, but we live in the capitalism. There is no exhibition of value without economic value, and there's no economic value, that's now very interesting, without symbolic value. That's a new thing. What they're revealing, that normally we think, okay, every commodity is economic value, nothing else. But no, maybe we live in a new kind of capitalism where every commodity has a symbolic fetishism. That's not the fetishism of Karl Marx. It's fetishism of an aesthetic fetishism. That's the reason why in the so-called second market, I call it a first market, there are artists who change their artworks one to another, like the Soviets in the you know in the like Soviet people, you know, when they meet each other, will they give them some things, give you some beautiful things, you give me too some beautiful things, and there's no economic value. You know, Bruno Latour once said, we never had been modern, because he said, why? Because the scientists are fetishists. They always see only the object as a fetish, and that's like the Soviet people. So we have never been modern. And then I say, okay, then the artist is the only Soviet of the modernity. But he always knew that the artist changes fetish to each other between artists. This is the first market, I think. But nevertheless, no fetish in our capitalism without economic value. So, but on the other side, you can say no economic value without fetishism. And this is what's revealing the two parts, the two poles of the artwork of Kurt Ryslavy. You have, if you only see the economic way, you have an economic thinking in your head. If you only see the cultural way, you have only a culturalistic way in your head. Both poles are wrong if you see only the one without the other. And they have the same knowledge in the two authorships. There's knowledge of the two authorships in the two poles of the two markets.
Do you see, Monica, I don't know, or maybe Thomas, do we know, or let's say, to ask it to all of us, except Kurt, do we know other artistic practices who are close or similar to the Verkaufswerken?
I cannot really think of one on top of my head, but I actually wanted to add to something that Thomas said, which I completely agree with, and which also further leads into this idea of, like, again, to come back to this idea of owning and buying, which is not only about the monetarian value, as you said, it's about fetish, and it's about ideas, or that really the concept behind, and this is not related to just conceptual works. This is related to every artwork itself, and that this comes with it. And I think that this is in a way doubled in Kurt's work, since there is this concept or fetish around an artist in itself, which becomes that product or the Verkaufswerk in the way that it's called, in that, like in a very monetarian or sales way. And then there is the second layer, which is then Kurt's authorship and the fetishization that he is doing with this work. In a way, it's lifting this work to another level, because they have this a label. They are worth being Verkaufswerke, or like however you want to see it, and their work they become a work of himself, and therefore another fetish object. And I think that is super interesting to just think about this aspect of also circulation of these works, and as Thomas stressed, not only from a monetarian or market aspect, but really of what difference, for example, it also means who owns a work, or where is it shown? Is it shown in a gallery or in a museum? Is it owned still by the artist and given to another artist, or is it bought by a collector, or is a work bought by another artist? Like, I think there are so many layers coming together, and they can be really discussed in a very interesting way through thinking about Kurt's work.
I can advise you, by the way, Monica, to acquire it for the Brandfort Museum.
Absolutely, yeah.
What a good idea.
Yeah. As Kurt says, it's just about the money now. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Philip, if you're an ethnologist, an anthropologist, and to go to another people, you don't want to destroy the fetish of them. You want to explain the fetish. That's what Kurt did. He didn't destroy the fetish. He explained the fetish. He revealed what it is, the fetish. That's new, I think. And that's maybe not a revolution, but at least what can say the name Kurt Ryslavy is marked in the field of the history of the field of the art. That can be say.
I think that I was recently reading the publication of Clémentine de Lys, the Metabolic Museum, that she was like a bit a kind of a diary on her experiences in Frankfurt and Weltkunstmuseum or Weltkulturenmuseum, I don't know exactly. And I think she should have been inviting Kurt back in those days, because that could be really like a more than valid artistic position in order to dissect what she has been trying to dissect, according to me.
No, I remember maybe something similar to Kurt. It was Hirschhorn, I think, in London. She closed the gallery and give all her money, as long the gallery was closed, to the members of the gallery. It's a little bit in the same direction.
Yeah. Or also then, Pavel Althammer using the whole budget of his exhibition for doing something which he gave back to a community, and that's more but it's still different, I think. Still different. Yeah. Liesje, maybe there are some questions.
Hi, thank you. Yes, in fact, there's a question for Kurt from Peter Witze, and I think this question needs first some more explanation, but I'll ask it to you. The question is about the idea behind selling paint powder sacks 15 years ago in cyclists' catalogs.
Sorry.
I don't know if you understand the question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, he asks about the idea behind selling paint powder bags in cyclist catalogs. I thought you could help us, but...
Paint power? What is paint power?
Powder, I think. Powder. Like
paint powders, pigments. Pigments in a bag?
That's the question. I thought you would know what he
in a
was talking about.
Catalog or what? In a
cyclist's catalog.
Cyclists?
Catalogs.
Cyclists catalog.
Okay.
Maybe this gentleman is in the wrong live stream.
Maybe it was a joke.
Yeah.
I sold once at a performance pigments, color pigments, to people that they can become a painter. And Hermann Dallet, for example, he bought a bag of pigments, but I don't know if this is the question.
Me neither. Okay, there's another question from Bjornus van der Borgt. Could we say that the artwork reflects upon integrity of the curator in relation to the artist, as curatorial processes being an artwork itself?
seems complicated.
Mm.
The integrity of the curator towards the artist?
That's a good question. It's a very good question, because the field of art is not only the artist, it is the curator, it is the museum, we are a speaker, some people are writing about it. And that's a very difficult relationship between all these persons that makes the value of an artwork, although the artist is the person who made the artwork. And I think it's reflecting, Kurt Ryslavy's artwork is reflecting about these relationships. They are very, very difficult, at least.
The question was twofold, no, Lieschen?
Yes.
Twofold?
The
Yeah.
second part, as curatorial processes being an artwork itself?
Oh,
Question
no,
mark.
certainly not. Certainly not. That doesn't exist. No artwork can process, or no gallery can process itself. That's a relationship between all different people and in the battle around the artwork.
Yeah, I would agree. It can be a creative process, of course. It should be first and foremost. But I also would not say that that it is or can be art itself. I mean, there are artists curators, and this might be a different and more complex discussion. But I think in relation with the artist and curator and doing like shows together or producing, I think it also comes with how you understand the role of a curator. And I think that the curator should actually be there to help make something possible, or to be in a way a mediator with a lot of different things, be it like a theoretical art historical aspect, be it an audience, or be it a space, or be it, I don't know, many things.
Do you agree, Philippe?
The most easy answer is yes, huh?
So say no, so we have something to
No, two things, because the gentleman who was asking the question, I know him personally, and I know in which fields he's active, and is also really very active in terms of like digital art and you know, like trying to have another understanding of you know, experiencing art as a physical process. So in that sense, I think that he was like questioning how one could look at the kind of extended fields in the terms of what we still describe in kind of rather traditional schemes. In the sense that we talk about the different actors, and the different actors who all are like you know, unavoidable and crucial in order to talk about an art context or an art ecology, or to talk about an artwork or a curator or a critic or a gallery or a museum. You know, it's this kind of complex spider's web. At the other hand, I think it's also our task, I think as a museum, in order to generate, or to try to generate some clarity, you know, to bring some kind of transparency in certain process and museum processes and events in the art world. Because I see that for sure in the context of Flanders, where we have like certain political forces you know, being more present than others, that immediately as a consequences, you see also that the art world and that galleries and the whole mechanism is fostering more conservative positions, and is like fostering these positions who are more attractive within a context which is marked by conservatism and anxiety and so more. So, and then I think that it's the task of a museum, in order to generate transparency, in order to make, you know, complex positions and complex artist positions accessible in a direct way. You know, I don't know if I'm 100% clear, and that's why, for instance, also for me, the Kurt is such an important artist, on which I have to say that it's for me difficult to make abstraction of my admiration and my critical respect. You know, it's a bit a kind of one thing, you know, although I'm expected as a museum director to hide my admiration for artists. Isn't it?
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have like I'm not a director, so I don't know if that makes a difference in the role, but I think that to be in that job, I think we cannot do it without any admiration or affection to art in general, and artists, of course, as well. And yeah, and to me, I mean, it's also when it's the question whether it is a job like any other job, I would disagree and say no, it's not. Like it's so personal, because there is, and this comes in play again, there is this other level of value, and which is on so many levels relevant, like a moral one, like an idealistic one, a political one, an aesthetic one, and they all touch our like emotions and make us furious or happy.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're living in, also because of COVID, which is not a part of a sanitary crisis, a part of a health crisis. It's much more than this. According to me, it's a system crisis, and you see that it's being it's being handled in a way that I see that also culture and art and cultural expression, production activities, participation, and so on is being neglected. Even if we are open in Belgium, even the museum is able to be visited, even then I think that it's that we are a bit put aside. But these are the words of an optimist. Huh? Let me be clear about this. Huh?
Nevertheless, there's a big problem in the museum and every gallery, that every taste is justified in a democratic way. Every taste is justified. Nevertheless, we have legitimacy. Legitimacy says that there's some taste in the museum that is with a higher value. Or how get this together with the fact that we're in a democracy where everybody has a right of this taste? So that's the problem. And museums director or whatever troubles in museums have wisdom that there are some revolutions, as you said, Philip, in the field of art, in the history of the art. And you have to know this revolution, because this revolution, one of the every step is building of another step of revolution. You can't make a painting like Van Gogh today and say, okay, that's innovated, that's nothing. You can't do playing like Beethoven and say, now that's innovation. No, that's not. You must know the linearity. After Beethoven, there come 12-tone music and whatever. And in the history of art, it's the same thing. After Duchamp, there come the minimalism, then the minimalism, and so on and so on. And that's what you have to remake in the museum. And if you have the wisdom of this, then of course you have another taste. But the problem is how to remediate to people who have not the code to know about these revolutions in the field of art. That's a big problem. I think that's up till now not any solution. We have only the possibility to say, okay, we need to discourse and the conflict with people who haven't this wisdom.
Yeah. And that's what we try tonight, to mediate a bit the gentle revolution of Kurt Ryslavy.
I'm convinced that the majority of the people that hear to us are people who are going to the museum.
Of a director like Philippe, where we can mediate that what you say. That it's a question of communication. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's always good when one says it's a question of communication and then be silent. Yeah.
You know what John Cage once said? You get a question, then he said, "Oh, that's so good question. I can't give you any answer because that answer would disturb it."
Indeed.
Then maybe it's a good moment to end this nice conversation, unless someone wants to add something. No, I think your work, Kurt, the book, but also this conversation gave us a lot to think about. So thank you for this. If someone wants to buy the book, the practical information, you can buy it at the bookshop in S.M.A.K, Ghent, or you can order it at kurt@ryslavy.com. And then I wish all of you a very nice evening, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
you.